I got an A1s in my 2025 WASSCE and my 2024 GC. Hey guys, I'm Mustafa Itman and here's how I did it. Before I get into the techniques I used to achieve my results, I'd like to mention that the things I'm discussing in this video are what worked for me, not necessarily the perfect way of doing things. You should not feel obligated to do every single thing I talk about in this video. Now that I've gotten all the formalities out of the way, let's get to it.
We are going to have three parts: general tips, study tips, and exam day tips.
So the first tip I'm going to tell you today is to set clear goals. It's very easy and common to hear people say, oh, I want to get 7 A1s, I want to get 80, I want to get 9 A1s, with no really specific thing. Okay, if you want to get 7 A1s, which subject are you planning to get those A1s in, right? So what I found useful to do is I wrote down all the subjects I was going to write in my WAEC. I saw this for my JAMB and my GC, by the way. So I wrote out all the subjects I was writing, and I wrote out the grade I wanted in each subject. So I wrote this subject, okay, A1, this subject A1, like that, like that, like that. Then I pasted it on my wall in a place where every single day when I woke up, I would see the paper there, right? So this way you are constantly reminding yourself of this, these goals you already set for yourself. And that's going to help you like manage your time better. And the second thing I'll be talking about today is having a calendar. So if you can maybe, I don't know, one day I've never seen anybody selling calendar before. You just give them. Anyway, so I have a calendar. You can use a calendar on your phone or anything like that. But I personally just prefer to have a physical calendar. So I had a calendar that I made. Basically, I just wrote out the days of the week. So I put, we are still our work timetable some months before the exam, right? So I put the day I was having each subject and everything there. So at the end of each day, I made sure to cancel out that day. So let's say today is February 1, right? And my first paper for WAEC is May 5. Let's assume that. So February 1, after I'm done for the day, like when I'm about to sleep, I would cross off February 1. Then February 2, I'll cross off February 2. So what this does, or what this did for me, is that it made me more conscious that, oh, time is going one day at a time. So you don't keep on thinking you have time. You can actually like see the number of weeks, the number of days you have left to your exam, right? And it also shows you the distribution of your subject. Like if you look at WAEC timetable, it's a little bit, you have so many subjects you're not offering and things like that. So aside extracting my subjects, I also put them on my calendar. So let's say I have physics on May 5. Beside May 5, I'll just write physics. When it comes to studying for your WAEC, the first thing I would like to cover is optimizing your past questions, or optimally making use of your past questions. You are not just going to magically improve by solving past questions. If you're writing WAEC in 2026, you don't really need to go to past questions before 2015. Like 2015 should be your limit, and like 2015 should be like as far back as you can go. You don't need to practice anything before 2015. That's just my advice. Like if you can finish 2015, 2025, you can then choose to go and go beyond and do what you like. Yeah, that's all. But if you are just starting, don't start from year 2000 or something like that. Our advice is to start from 2015 or even 2016. The way I used my past questions was I first analyzed them to see which topics came out the most often. So let me give you an example. Before we get to the example, personally I preferred to start analyzing past questions from the theory aspect. And this was because the practical aspects, some students don't even have practicals. And for students like physics, chemistry, and biology that do, the practical aspect is really just bonus points. Like in your physics practical, for example, they will tell you, okay, do this, record this, multiply this by this, add this, then plot the graph of this against this. So if you are like dutiful with your practical, if you are careful, you don't avoid silly mistakes, you should be able to make like 40 over 50 without too much sweat. That's just it, because they're just giving you the instructions. All you have to do is learn to follow them. And then the objective part, I believe that when you study for theory, automatically you would find the objectives easier. But of course, we're still going to get to that. But I prefer to just start with the theory first. So the way I approach studying was that I would analyze past questions for about 5 years. I'll just look at the theory. Okay, what topics came out? I'll write down the topic that came out in 2016 in the theory aspect. So I'll try writing it down here. So I'm talking about the second aspect of the theory. The theory is divided into two aspects: the 7 questions and then 5 questions. So those 5 questions are the ones that carry the bulk of the theory. right? So for 2015, for example, we have motion, heat, waves, electricity, and moments was also inside that equilibrium of forces. Then radioactivity. So they blended electricity with equilibrium of forces. Then for 2016, what came out was motion, heat, waves, electricity, and energy quantization. So basically the exact same thing as 2015, just that they changed the last topic, right? Let's look at 2017. For 2017, we have motion, then gas laws with simple machines, then waves, then electricity, then radioactivity. So you can see the same four topics. The second one, they just changed heat to gas laws. For some reason, I forgot to do 2018, but for 2019, we have gravitational force, heat, energy quantization, motion, and I think another energy quantization, according to what I have here. So, what can we see from here? We can see that okay, motion, heat, waves, radioactivity, electricity, and energy quantization come out a lot. So those are six topics. So let's say you are studying for your exam, and let's say you don't even have time to read all the six, so you read just five. Let's say you read motion, heat, waves, radioactivity, and energy quantization, and you have to write a WAEC in 2020. For 2020, the topics that came out were heat, radioactivity, waves, motion, and AC circuits. So you can see what I'm saying. Even though that AC circuit was not among what you read because maybe you didn't have time to get there or something. Heat, radioactivity, waves, and motion. You still have four topics to choose from. I know you are going to ask you to choose three out of five. Those are four topics you already know, and then let's say there's one aspect of the question that you're not so familiar with. You can just decide that okay, choose the three that you know best and do it. So don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying that you should read just five topics and forget the remaining, but I'm saying that this should be a baseline. When you've analyzed your past questions and discovered that okay, these seven or so topics are repeating, so maybe just pick five out of those topics that you are very that you prefer. Let's say you don't really like electricity, for example, so you can just pick six topics and just remove electricity for the time being. So this should be your baseline of what you must cover. Then after your baseline, after you finish, like say your baseline in physics, you go and meet that same baseline in chemistry and all your subjects. Because remember that getting a very good score isn't just like if you get 95 in chemistry or you get 80 in chemistry, you're still going to show as A1. For the purposes of WAEC, it's actually better to have 80 over 100 in all your nine subjects. That gives you 9 A1s than to have 95 in eight subjects and then go and get 70 in one subject. It's actually because no one is going to know that you're clean with 80. For the purposes of WAEC, you should make sure that you are balancing your strengths and your weaknesses. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is study schedule. A common question I get is how many hours do I read per day? So what I'll say is that for the exam that I wrote, I didn't really have a target number of hours I wanted to read. Like I didn't tell myself, oh, I'm going to read 8 hours today. What I just did was I tried to optimize my time. Like I mentioned earlier that use every single second you've got. So there may be some days where I have a lot of like chores to do and I can read for only 2 hours. And then there are other days where I'm relatively free and there's no school that day and I'm able to read a lot more. So I don't think it's a good idea to just tell yourself, oh, I want to read for 6 hours because that way you're focusing. I think you're focusing too much on the amount of time you want to spend reading. Whereas it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. You know what I'm saying? So if you keep your countdown calendar where you're like tracking the days as they go by and you basically just make a simple study schedule, I'll be talking about that later. I think that's okay. You don't really need to say I'm going to for 6 hours every day. So the kind of study schedule I would suggest is not one where you have maybe 8 to 9 a.m. chemistry, 9 to 10 a.m. biology, something like that. That's not really what I'm suggesting. I'll suggest maybe you just have like, okay, this week, Monday, I'm going to work on chemistry. Tuesday, I'll work on this subject. I advise you not to put more than two subjects in one day. And the reason for that is it's just I think that's just better. It's better to just have focus on one subject or at most two subjects each day. Having five subjects, maybe five in one day is not really optimal. I think it's a very, very important point I'm talking about here. Study techniques. There are a lot of study. I use a lot of study techniques that I believe are really, really effective. So the first one I'm talking about is active recall or blotting. This kind of go hand in hand. I'm making a separate video where I talk about study techniques, but I'll just try to summarize them here. So active recall is basically um well, as name implies, recalling what you have read actively. Okay, so active recall is the way you practice active recall is after you have read a particular topic, without looking at a textbook, right? And without opening it, like opening it, try to pour out every single thing you know about that topic. Like let's say I just read heat energy, for example. So let's say it can be maybe when I'm washing plate or something. I'll just decide that okay, what is heat? Heat is this. What is temperature? Temperature is this. What's the unit of it? That's this. Like that until I like basically recite, not really recite, but once I basically say every single thing I know about heat energy. So after that, I go back to my textbook. Okay, what did I miss? What did I forget? Get things like that. So I also mentioned blotting. Blotting is basically just like active recall, but even better. The way blotting works is you, after reading a topic, right, you write down every single thing you know about the topic. And then after that, okay, so like when you're reading the topic, you're going to be jotting, right? So when you're going to be jotting, so yeah, you try to basically just reproduce your jottings, everything you know about that topic without looking at the textbook. So by the time you are done, you now look for okay, what did I jot down that I didn't end up writing? Then those things you jot down, you didn't end up writing, you now write it out in red pen. So why blotting is very effective is because you are focusing on that part that you don't really know yet. So let's say for example, I just wrote out okay, definition of heat, definition of temperature, right? But I forgot something crucial. Whenever you are defining something in physics, at least for wire purposes, you should always give additional information. So if you define, let's say you define temperature as the measure of average kinetic energy of molecules of a substance, you must also mention that the temperature is measured in this. You know what I'm saying? So let's say you forgot that, okay, you note it down. You know that okay, always add extra information when defining something, like maybe give another definition or write the units, for example. So active recall, sorry, blotting makes you focus on those aspects you're not really sure of. So let's say you read in the morning, so you're going to blot everything down in the evening, right? Then tomorrow, see how many things you can. So then tomorrow you did it again. And after a while, like after you do it tomorrow, maybe wait for 2 days, use the principle of spaced repetition. Spaced repetition is basically just studying what you have learned at regular intervals after reading it so that you don't forget. I'll be making a video on these study techniques later. Having a jotter. So when I went to my work, I had an entire jotter that I dedicated to jotting. So like anytime I read it, as I'm reading a topic, I'll just be noting down key points. Note down the most important things you need to know, like things that can possibly show up on an exam. Like if you're reading about atoms, for example, you don't need to say, oh, you don't need to like start jotting down that atom was derived from the Greek word this. You just write down the important points. Okay, what is an atom? Maybe who proposed the idea of atom, Democritus or something like that. Then down is atomic theory. You write down just the important things that can come as an exam, the most important things, because you want to keep your jotter as small as possible, basically. Then if you know you're someone that also struggles with formulas, you want to just like write out all the formulas, like have a special book for writing formulas. I didn't do that because I didn't really need to. Leveraging AI. The thing is, in this day and age, artificial intelligence is very common, right? So if maybe your teacher isn't explaining the way you understand and you maybe don't have the resources to pay for a lesson teacher or something like that, you can ask AI questions. There are a lot of free AI you can use like DeepSeek, ChatGPT, a lot of them. There are 1,001 different um, LLMs out there. So yeah, use AI. Just be careful when you use AI. Like use your discretion too, because even AI says that okay, like, even when you open any artificial intelligence, it will tell you that okay, the messages given by AI are not necessarily 100% accurate. But I use it to gain more explanations and also watching videos on YouTube about certain topics. Remember that what you are learning in school isn't confined to the curriculum. It's a universal thing. If they tell you, okay, the art has 4 chambers, yeah, it has 4 chambers. That's just it. So you can also, use AI. And when you're using AI, I think a tip you can add is maybe okay. Let's say you want to learn about Newton's laws of motion. So you can tell AI, okay, can you explain what an high school student needs to know about Newton's laws of motion? So the reason you are putting ISO secondary school is that so that AI doesn't go too advanced because AI has no way of knowing whether you are a secondary student or a PhD student. So just so that it gives you something that you can handle. Use different textbooks. When I was reading, the way I personally like to read is, let's say I'm reading chemistry, right? So I'll have understanding chemistry, I have laminate chemistry, whatever chemistry do I have opened. The thing is that different textbooks explain different things in different manners. So a textbook may say one thing that in a way you understand it, or in a way you don't really understand it, and then when you read another textbook, it's now adds a little another. It looks at it from another perspective, basically. So both textbooks will now like complement each other. So yeah, use different textbooks. Don't use just one textbooks to study. Use different textbooks to study. And while you are studying, to study to understand. Don't just cram. Study to actually know. Okay, what's this? What's the whole idea behind this thing? Practice, practice, practice. Practice makes perfect. So after you have done all this, after you have reached your baseline in all these subjects, make sure you just keep on practicing, keep on solving past questions, keep on drilling your weak points. Remember, the difference between A1 and B2 can be just one mark. So you have to really take this thing seriously. So just practice and practice and practice. Leave no stone unturned, basically. So at the end of the day, even if there's a glitch or whatever with your results, you can at least you can be confident that I did my best. That's really what you should aim for here. Like I did my best, I didn't turn on turned, I did everything I could do. Exam tips. So the first thing I'll say is try to get to your exam center at least at the very minimum 1.5 hours before you have your exam. Don't plan to get to your exam or just 30 minutes before your exam. Anything can happen. When I was writing my WAEC for one of my papers, it had rained heavily in the night, and then some electric poles had fallen to the main road. And by the time I was already going to school, there was a massive traffic congestion. But at the end of the day, because I had left my house very early, with the mind of getting to school by 8, even though my exam was 9:30. Because I went out earlier, I eventually got to school around 9. So basically, target to get your exam 1.5 or even 2 hours before you actually have your paper. Then make sure you have all your writing materials or your stationery. I said collaborate earlier. It's not in the exam you should be collaborating. You may have an instructor that's strict and doesn't even want you to borrow, and you should not even be borrowing an exam. An exam like WAEC is a very important exam. Come with your writing materials. Manage your exam paper. As I understand it now, WAEC basically gives you space under each question. So, especially for subjects like physics, mathematics, you may want to divide your paper into two vertically, and then so that way you have more space to write. Yeah, believe in yourself. Like if you're a Christian, read your Bible, pray to God, believe that everything will go well. If you're a Muslim too, same goes for you. Read your Quran, whatever religion you are practicing, things will work out. So whatever you are doing, just believe that if God wills it, it will be. Like do your best and leave the rest, basically. Thanks for watching.